And we're live. Hi, everyone. It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right? Yes. Oh, no, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday today. I get mixed up because sometimes I've been doing Wednesdays and sometimes I've been doing Tuesdays, depending on availability. So, welcome to Closing Show Live. Today, we're doing it on a Tuesday. Sometimes we do it on a Wednesday. And I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about proposals again. So, I've been talking about a lot of sales stuff throughout the year, but we've been focusing on proposals for June. So, welcome to the show. And this is the first time you're joining us. The Closing Show Live is a weekly live show featuring the people of Proposify, sales stars in the trenches, and revenue leaders. The Closing Show Live is hosted by me, Nadia Milani, VP of Marketing at Proposify. Every week, we discuss the challenges we're facing, the no BS lessons we've learned, so you can crush your close rates. The Closing Show Live is brought to you by Proposify. Get consistency, control, and visibility into your proposal process. Start your 14-day trial today. It's free at proposify.com. So if you join and sometimes there's a bunch of things that happen every single week. So just a couple of housekeeping. The live will freeze. Sometimes it happens on LinkedIn. So just press pause and then you can just press play again. You can catch the recording on the Proposify LinkedIn page, proposify.com, or on YouTube. Just search Closing Show Live. And to win a prize today, we're giving away a Closing Show Live and Proposify swag pack. All you got to do is ask a question. So it's super easy. Just type in the comments section wherever you're joining us from today, either live, joining us live from Facebook, LinkedIn, or on YouTube, just type in the question. So want to make your proposals better? So do the folks at Sales Assembly. So Tanner Lacey, revenue at Sales Assembly, is joining us today. And we're going to be discussing the current proposal process at Sales Assembly, the proposal format and structure, Matt and Tanner. So Matt's actually, he can't join us today. So it's just going to be Tanner solo, but that's fine. So he's going to talk about the format and the structure that they're using, as well as actionable takeaways from us, both of us, so you can improve your proposals today. So all in the name of closing more deals. So welcome to the show, Tanner.
Thanks, Nadia.
Amazing.
You've got the intro down. I love it. I got to take some lessons from you.
Amazing. You know what? This is like, I think, our 36th straight live. So we've been doing weekly lives. And the one thing is that I've been kind of using the same intro week to week. So I think I'm going to like change it up like in our season 2. I don't think I'm going to have the same intro. I'm going to switch it up and I'm going to make it different every single episode.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, you sounded great. So for what that's worth.
Awesome. So welcome to the show. So happy that you're here. Matt couldn't join us, but that's okay. Because Tanner, just
better actually. Yeah. So we'll save everybody for Matt. I'm sure Matt will watch this later. He'll give me some grief for that. But no, excited to be here.
Amazing. Sandra's here. If you're joining us today, tell us where you're joining us from. Nice. I'm so happy that you're spending your afternoon with us, but it's a quick 30 minutes. So I really want to get to it because every single week that we do the show, what happens is we start talking and then all of a sudden there's like 5 minutes and we haven't got to all the amazing stuff that we want to get to. So for those that are joining that don't know Sales Assembly, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown about what you do?
Yeah, so Sales Assembly focuses on live peer-to-peer trainings and on-demand trainings that focus on fundamental skills for sales teams and CS teams, actually. So everyone in the commercial org. So we focus on the things that make you a better seller, and we assist sales enablement teams in giving them additional resources for those teams. So if you have questions, obviously let me know. But in a quick 15-second rundown, that's what Sales Assembly does.
Amazing. So do you work with like specific industries or do you work with like all industries?
So mostly B2B tech, B2B SaaS. So, I mean, we can go into this another time when we have more time, but the idea is that the skills that are needed to really excel in the role, or at least the fundamental skills to excel in the role are the same for most B2B companies. So the idea here is that we can create a community and a peer learning environment where, sellers, CS teams, and leaders from all these different orgs that sell B2B can come together to learn together and focus on those fundamental skills.
So good. Thanks for that breakdown. So if you're looking for more information, get connected with Tanner on all of that, which is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the proposal process. So we've been doing proposal, we're calling them power ups the last, or in June. So this is our second. We did one last week with Corey Bray. So we're doing this one with sales at the Sales Assembly. But I just wanted to know, like, take me through the current process, proposal process. It's always kind of at the end of the deal, but how does it work at Sales Assembly?
Yeah, so for better or for worse, we have a fairly simple proposal process. I think for the better, but I guess we'll see what how the grade is here in a second. So Sales Assembly has two sides to things. It has the sponsorship side and then it has the membership side. I focus much more on the membership side personally. And what this looks like is it's fairly straightforward, which is minus a few potential add-ons. It's an all-in-one membership, so it's more or less a platform fee. We do look at the initial size of the company, so there's some of that discovery that needs to happen, but from there we figure out what that platform fee is going to be. And then everyone at the company has access to sales assembly and the different pieces of that.
Amazing.
So we talk about pricing generally pretty early in the process. The proposal oftentimes is included in like the second or third calls follow-up. We'll put together a deck, which we'll probably dive into here to in a second, which just as a quick overview, because we were talking about earlier, I think everyone here knows the buyer committee, is getting bigger and requirements are getting heavier, talking to a lot more CFOs. So we just want to arm our champions with as much information as possible, including pricing early on, so we can just get it out of the way and move the deal forward.
So good. So how many people are actually creating proposals? Is it just like one or two people, or is there a bunch of like sales folks at Sales Assembly that are putting them together?
So 2.5 people right now. You have myself, you have Jenna Rogers, who leads up the sponsorship side of the business, and the half is Matt. So Matt it's generally us who does it, but Matt is also putting this together or assisting us in putting them together.
Okay, amazing. And are there steps that you guys follow, or is it just like here's all the versions, or is it like based on what the customer or buyer wants? So if it's either a membership or sponsorship, there's certain steps, or do you kind of just like go with the flow? How does it work?
Yeah, so memberships and sponsorships, come with inherent differences. With sponsorship, there's a little bit more opportunities. Like we do dinners and we do different events and things in person. We have different newsletters, podcasts, all these different things that can be thrown into these sponsorships, as well as what we call category sponsorships, which allow you to come in and do a big chunk of those and own a section of the thought leadership inside the community. Amazing. On the membership side, it's pretty straightforward. We do talk and we think about the sizing and the pricing strategy on how we do this. We are also actively moving to doing multi-year versus just single year as much as we can. But it's honestly not an overly complex process.
So good. So let's take a look at it. Can you share your proposal? So we're going to take a look at the Sales Assembly, kind of what the structure looks like today, proposal structure. And then if you could just review kind of like top to bottom, the why around some of the pages that have been included.
Yeah, let me, we'll just share my screen here.
So it's at the present. So last week was the first time after 34 or 5-ish episodes that I've actually shared my screen.
So is this the right one right here? Can you see my
add to the screen? There we go. Yes.
Okay.
It's there.
Awesome. So yeah, tell me where to begin.
Yeah, so just let's walk through just the proposal. Just take us through like kind of the sections that you have, and then from there, what I'll do is we'll talk through some of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Cool. So most complex page here is our first one, right? The introduction page. So as you can see, I spent tons of time on this, and I do every single time. Really, really simple. So like when we're talking more in depth with prospects, we will have touched on three main things, right? Which is that we're focused on outcomes, we're enhanced by community, and that we're built for engagement. So those are kind of like our three pillars. My quick 20-second pitch kind of weaves in between those. But we want to provide our champions with that so they can, they have it, and B, the team can have it. And then the rest of the proposal actually breaks through and it gives us a little more insight onto this. So this is actually the deck that I would use. This is a light version of the deck that I would use on like a discovery call or a second call to kind of go through more in depth that we do. These are much more higher, more 10,000, 20,000 foot views than actually getting really down deep into it. After you flow through that, here's just kind of what the annual membership looks like. Again, this is a membership proposal. So it's going to break down the different programming that's available, the community events that are happening, and the platform that's included in that. Here's our pricing breakdown right here. Again, fairly simple. I did throw in here an a la carte dinner sponsorship just so for the purpose of getting your feedback on this call and also showing kind of some of the different things we'll include in these from time to time. And then we followed up with just again a quick why we think we're special point. Well, we feel pretty lucky about some of our customers we've got here, so we're going to brag about them a little bit and then trying to finish off with some social proof.
Amazing. Yeah, so I love a lot of what you have. Maybe you can unshare the screen.
Okay.
Amazing. Thank you. So yeah, no, I think so what we saw last week was a completely different proposal. So I think and what we do see, especially with people who aren't using a proposal software, is typically they'll just have quoting, like very simple quoting with price, text, very little. So I love the fact that there is already established branding in that proposal. You lead in with the pain point already. So it's kind of understanding what are the usual pain points with your customer. I think, with each proposal, there is some personalization. So it's understanding the key points of the problems with the particular customer that you're working with. But if it's an ICP, an ideal customer, you're usually going to have the same pain points. So I like how you led with that. Some stats. So our team, so our marketing team was at an actually offsite last week, and we were at the LinkedIn offices, just like jamming and talking shop. But there were some key interesting facts that they presented based on their research. So B2B buyers, 77% had a hard time making a buying decision with their last purchase, and so they actually called it hard and difficult. And because there's a lot more buyers in the process. So you had mentioned that. We had talked a little bit about this in our last proposal power up, is that today there are so many more buyers in the buying process. So the fact that you were able to put in a lot of detail, branding, so you get the feel of who is really Sales Assembly, what you do, the pain points that you address, the actual pricing, it's all there. And the reason why that's really important is the more detail you put in, you address the other people who are not in the room when you're having the conversations. So you might be having conversation with me, for example, the VP of marketing, about sponsorships, but the VP of marketing is probably going to be going to the CFO and the COO or others on the team with that proposal. So it's really important to put a lot of detail. So I like how you have that. Is this video just about using the software? Will you be getting into tips and suggestions on proposals? Yeah. So this is where the tips are, is adding a lot more details into your proposal. So I like that, because if you looked at last week's proposal power up, there was very little detail there. I also like the fact that you had a lot of imagery. So you had imagery with your customers and case studies. So I feel like that was really, really great. We analyze about a million proposals, and one of the things that we found is that just by adding either images to your proposal, but even video, it'll help increase your close rates by 41%. I'm curious if you add any videos to your proposal process. Do you add it to the beginning, the middle, on the proposal, or at the end? We found that video really did increase the close rates, and specifically around sending a proposal to a buying committee.
Yeah, so I haven't done video in the past. I'd be interested in seeing like how people are leaving that in. I think the reason why I haven't tried that is that, for right or wrong, I'm pretty stuck in my ways about not talking pricing unless I'm on the phone with somebody. So it's
Right.
like I never kick this deck over the fence, and like after they ask me for pricing, like if I'm ever discussing it, I want to be on the call with them. I know things are happening behind the scenes, so maybe I guess I could see the value from my current process if like someone was ghosting me or something on it. But I'd love to hear what you're saying, because if I can increase my win rates by 41%, that's I'll take it.
Yeah. So what we do see is that people who are including video, either like the email stage or in the proposal, they're adding kind of these specific things to the video. So introducing yourself. So just introducing yourself as who you are, and what you've been speaking about to really the point of that you are in the buying process. Summarizing key problems that you've identified. So these are the key problems that we addressed. Tying each problem to your solution. So what were the problems that we addressed, and here is like the solution that we're providing. Outlining next steps such as signing and kickoff. So if there are already next steps that are defined, these are the next steps that we've talked about, and thanking them obviously, and looking forward to like working together. So it's kind of like this positive, like looking forward to how this looks like moving forward. But we had noticed that 41% close rate increase in those who had added the video. I loved how you added images as well. So images is something that helps winning proposals. So we noticed that 82% of winning proposals have images. So 66% of winning proposals have at least three. And I think you've had at least like 3, 4, or 5 in your proposal, which is great. I'm just curious. The one thing that I saw that was missing is that we saw that proposals that have actual images of their team also help increase close rates. I'm curious if that's something that you do include, because Sales Assembly does have a high profile team, specifically your CEO, Matt. I'm curious if you include that as part of some of your proposals.
No, we haven't. I haven't actually thought about that. I've always, I guess personally, always thought of this as more like a marketing exercise. Which, like, I guess my experience with my marketing teams in the past has always been like lots of stock image and like branding, and so that's definitely an interesting insight. We'll have to give that a try.
Amazing. So I wanted to show you just a proposal template that is typical. And so yours actually is very similar, which I thought. So this is like an optimized proposal that has all the key sections. So one of the things that I will lead off with is that winning proposals have an average of about 12 sections, and it's so 12 pages and 7 sections. So which also kind of shows that the more detail there is, typically they will lead to a winning proposal. This one has a little bit more, though, I believe, in terms of sections, but generally this is how it looks like. I'm going to just present my screen.
So while you're doing that, I'm curious on like when you hit the crux, right? So like when is it not enough versus when is it too much, right? Well, like when are you adding friction versus reducing it in your proposals, or what are you guys saying?
Yeah, I think so. It depends. I hate this answer, but it depends on vertical industry. It depends on a lot of different things. I know that most of our clients our customers will start large, like have 12, and then they'll start to omit sections based on metrics. So what will happen is we'll have there's a metrics, analytics component to it. So it's understanding like who and how many views are you getting on certain sections and pages. So if you're getting a lot of views on certain pages like pricing and about us and overview, you're going to want to keep those pages. But if you're noticing that there are certain pages that never get viewed, then you're going to probably want to omit those eventually. So here we go on the share screen. Yes, I did it the first time. Last week
There you go.
do it. Okay. So this is like a typical, template that we have that a lot of users will start off with. And this is similar to what we've seen just across like just proposals in general. And you have a lot of this. So it starts with obviously a cover, the one that you have spent a lot of time on that you said. Overview is next. So just an overview of your just discussions. And this is like one of the things that our sales director mentioned just recently, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. So there's some data around 45% of proposals that we see are opened within the first 24 hours. So you send it, they're opened. It makes a lot of sense. But there's this propensity for salespeople to just get the proposal out as quickly as you can so you can get it signed. But there is data that suggests like slowing down just a little bit, slowing down before speeding up, meaning that making sure that you've captured what you've discussed in discovery and putting it in the summary. So it's kind of speeding up or slowing down before you speed up. And it's really critical that you're not skipping steps in the discovery just to get to that proposal stage and getting this proposal out. So the About Us section is a really great, or overview is a really great place to put it. About Us, you've had that, which was great. I think one thing that people will add is just more information on meeting the team. So having like an extra section on that. And then just your timeline, like how does that look like if you've gotten to that part of the discussion, is having a timeline of what we're expecting. How is this going to look? I'm kind of going backwards here. I've skipped a couple here, but project summary is just the project summary based on how that'll look like. I mean, this is specific to like a construction vertical, so it might be different for the company that you're currently working on. project activities, also just like based another, it's another page that really kind of talks about the overall project summary. And then your investment is just the pricing page, which you obviously had. This sometimes is super complex with certain customers. Like this can be, if you're in IT, there could be like many items here, but for sponsorships, it's pretty clear cut. Your contract, so how does that look like? And this kind of like more of a statement of work. This one would have additional pages here because it's just more complex. And then finally, signature at the final stage. But one hack that we did find is that there is a, let me just get this data point on a hack with proposals is you will have I think it's 50 times so if you sign your proposal before you actually send it out, there's a 50 times more likelihood that it will actually sign. So just by you signing it as the salesperson before sending it out, that'll actually increase the close rate substantially.
So I'm curious on, because I guess I'm kind of looking at these as a little bit two separate things. Maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, right? Like I have my proposal and then I have like my sales order, right? And like proposal is a lot more about like who we are, what we do, the details, and where the sales order is a lot more like here's the legal terms, here's how you send me money, right? Like here's what my SLA is. I'm curious on like, is it better to have those together? Is it because like with the signature at the end, obviously like you're binding yourself to kind of something there, or at least potentially binding yourself to something. So I'm curious on, best practice as far as separating those out, putting them together, all that.
Yes. So it's a really great question. And I think that for the most part, there are many companies, especially smaller, that will separate those two things. But we do find that there is an advantage of combining those. So for example, by just asking users and what they found is that by combining those two things, that they are able to charge just more, so up to 15% more. And the reason why is because, and by 50% more than their competitors, just to be clear. And the reason why that happens is because they're able to put all the detail that they need, but also have the process all consolidated in one space. So it's like, here's pricing, here's signature, here's everything we discussed. And sending it at the very end when kind of everything has been discussed optimizes the close. So my recommendation is combining it if you can.
So do you generally just have like a link fit here that takes you to like terms and conditions, or because like billing that can be taken care of afterwards, right? Like we can talk after, but what about we luckily don't deal too much with privacy because we don't have access to really like any incriminating information.
Right.
But, what about, like the, SLAs and all that stuff? Are you generally linking that inside that proposal, or are you including that front page?
Yeah, depending on how complicated they are, like some customers, what we see is that they will include it if they're not really detailed, but if they are, they will link it out to a separate SLA document. So that is something that we've seen as well. I don't know if you want to take this question. Vanchika asks, what are your views on adding a gap analysis to the proposal itself? Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking about that as we've been talking. I think the more, obviously I don't have one here. I think the more customized you can get, it does a few things. One, especially if the gap analysis is like showing, a good opportunity for this partnership, I think that adds a ton of value. I get nervous just by default of adding extra stuff in because at the proposal phase, I like to see what I can do to decrease the noise, and I want to control as much of that as I can. But at the same clip, I think it goes a long way to see this, like for different stakeholders who haven't actually met you yet or will ever meet you, to see that you've put in the time to really understand their business. So I think I could go both ways on that being part of the proposal versus just part of like, the earlier experience through like other decks or different exercises you're going through. But yeah, Nadia, curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, no, I think I think it depends. I hate that answer. But I love I think that there is a lot more control when you potentially don't do it. But I do believe that the buying process is becoming more complex. We see it in just the data that we saw. I mean, I see it from a buyer perspective. So I'm a buyer, I'm a marketer, not a seller. And what I I buy a lot of tech. I buy a lot of marketing tech. And I know for me that the easier that you make it for me, the easier, the faster we'll get across the finish line. And what I mean by that is that so the person that is selling has done their research. They understand my business. And the more that they can do that, I think the more engaged the conversation gets. And I think also the more likelihood I'm going to buy it. And by it, I mean the software or anything. It could be a sponsorship. It could be anything that we're buying as a marketing team. But if you are addressing the need, you're personalizing it, and it's addressing the need not only for the marketing department, but you get a sense of what the business is actually going through right now. I think it just makes the whole experience a lot more positive, and I think you'll get closer to the sale. So the more that you can do that in the proposal stage, and even just bringing that across the whole entire buying journey, I think the more successful you will be, is my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So I'm just curious now. So in terms of so you've sent out the proposal. The big thing that comes up in terms of like just follow up. So when do you follow up? How much do you follow up? What do you do as sales assembly in terms of getting that proposal across the finish line? So you've shown them the proposal. I think you guys do a really good job. Honestly, out of 10, I'd give it an 8 in terms of 8 to 9 in terms of what you're including and how you're presenting it. The branding is awesome. But when you follow up, take me through how you do that as sales assembly.
Yeah, I mean, scoring an 8 or 9, that's better than my GPA in school, so it makes me feel,
Yes.
good. So be
So
living that B plus life. Um,
amazing.
so yeah, your favorite answer, I think it depends a little bit on the situation. So the one thing about proposals, in my opinion, is that like you've got to strike while the iron's hot. So if
Mm.
they're asking you for the proposal or they're showing intent for that, I'm going to be pretty insistent on getting them on another call. I want to have a follow-up call 2 days later. I want to know exactly when they're going to bring it up to their stakeholders so I can schedule 15 minutes with them at the end of that day. I'm going to be a little bit probably more pushy than I would in some other scenarios if I know that there's, if the timing's about right to potentially strike here. If someone asks for it earlier, if they're like, hey, just send me over your pricing, and I give in for that, again, which I'll always want to go over the pricing live, but if it's really early in the process, I'm not seeing strong intent, I probably would be more comfortable with kind of stringing that along on a more normal sales cycle until I felt like there was a real commit, because at some point, that's probably going to get revisited at that. If it's that early on and they don't quite know what they want yet, they probably don't know what their budget totally looks like or what they're shopping for. So, but yeah, my biggest follow-up on that is that it's like, make sure you follow up. For me, that's always a task in HubSpot. Generally only gets kicked out in between 1 to 3 days at a time.
Yeah.
But especially if we've been talking to these people for more than about 10 to 15 days, they ask for a proposal. That's when I'm going to get, to me, that's going to show more intent, and I'm going to be a lot more aggressive on following up and staying in touch quickly. I want to either qualify or disqualify that as soon as possible, because at that point it should start to become more black and white.
Yeah, Kevin asks, should expiration dates be used to create a sense of urgency?
So I have a love-hate with this. I am super guilty of using this at the end of quarters, at the end of months, what like 99% of sellers are. I don't love to create unneeded urgency or like artificial urgency whenever I don't need to. There's been months, especially like I came previously from a venture-backed company where we built that thing and it had a board and we had raised a ton of money, and those numbers mattered a lot depending on like how the board would feel about things. So at that point, we would add a little bit more artificial urgency. But I'm a big believer in, if you can show the value and the value of like acting quicker, sooner rather than later, hopefully that urgency will create itself. But so maybe that's a gap in like my ability to sell and where I should be focusing on. But I'm not a big fan of expiration dates, because I also think that whether we all agree with it or not, like a lot of the time, if you put an expiration date or something, the buyer knows what your floor is anyways. And so if that expiration date passes, they're just going to push you to go back to that same thing. And you just have lost a little bit of that credibility. But again, that could be a discipline on the industry. My guess is I've never sold for a bigger company, like an enterprise level company. And my guess is sometimes those expiration dates really do exist, and you're willing to like, die your laurels there, die on your whatever that saying is, like willing to like really fall on it. Usually I found in like smaller startups and tech companies, we put those there. Then we shrug our shoulders when they come in a few days late. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so on the buyer perspective on that, I find that if you're at the proposal stage, like I feel like follow-up is fine. Like you've gone that far, and I think you owe it to the seller to like just get really straight on when is this going to be signed? Because we know that the seller has deadlines, they have quota, even though that's not the first priority, obviously, for our business. But I think I always am very clear about what's happening from a signature perspective. Sometimes people are on vacation. There's been some time when signatures, like we really want it. It's at the end of the quarter, end of the year. And I'm like, dude, like our CFO's on vacation until January 1st. Like, I don't, so there's like, there will be stuff that happens, but I do agree with you if like you don't reach that agreement of when it's going to be signed, and then there's this automatic deadline that you haven't really agreed to, I feel like that's when it feels like it's just on the wrong side of selling.
Yeah.
Versus you agree to kind of like when it's going to happen, and you ask the questions of like, hey, just want to get back to my team of like, when are you going to, when could we expect a signed deal? And the buyer's like, it's going to happen this time. You could probably take their word for it at that point. And if it doesn't happen, that's when a good follow-up is, I feel help. I think that helps at that point.
Yeah. And I think there's a good, like, I do a lot of check-ins, where it's like, hey, just checking in. Like, I know you're supposed to talk with the team, curious on how it went. We'd love to have you come to XYZ event that's coming up, like always adding some sort of action that's going to be of value to them with the follow-up. I also think now, granted, this is probably a little bit different if you're selling something that's highly transactional. But if you're selling something that has any more than like a 30 to 35 day like close rate, which is still pretty transactional, but you should have created some sort of relationship here. But at this point, like they're buying more than just your product; they're still buying you, and so hopefully you have a relationship to fall back on where it's like, hey, just, shoot me straight on this. Like, tell me what's the best. Having been a buyer and a seller, maybe that's why I feel this way. It's like I think like the ones that the sellers that I trust, I tend to be very transparent about with, and the ones I tend to lose trust as people try to push me one way or the other. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of pros and cons there, but like I think the relationship that you have, how you can fall back on that is like very important.
Just a side note, just for those using proposal software, and not necessarily Proposify, but if you haven't checked out Proposify, just go to our site. But if you do use automatic reminders, so if it's built in as part of the software, whether even if you're using a quoting tool, we see that in our software after analyzing 1 million proposals, that automatic reminders make proposals 50% more likely to close. Because sometimes you forget, like there's like a lot of shit going on. And sometimes we just forget to like, I mean, you shouldn't, but sometimes we just forget to sign it. So sometimes those automatic like signatures actually help the seller, because it's not like you personally reaching out. It's just like, oh, that was just the automatic.
My guess is those notifications have a much higher open rate than my emails. So I think you're probably right.
I honestly got to get some data on that. Like just average, like just automatic reminders versus like seller reminders.
Well, it's like every time I get like a DocuSign reminder, I open it, even if it's not for me. Like I might even know what it's for, but every time I see that pop up, I'm like, oh, like what's this? And I got to imagine that's the same, fairly similar behavior for most people.
Amazing. So we're at time. Thanks so much for joining us, Tanner, and love to see all the stuff that you shared with us today. And by the way, I hadn't seen the proposal until like minutes before the show. So love that we did that. It was really raw, authentic, like just reviewing it. So
authentic. I love it.
How can our viewers or listeners, how can they reach you if they wanted to get more information on Sales Assembly or just tap you for some questions?
Yeah, I mean, also would just love to sincerely connect with anyone, and always trying to look to build a network. So LinkedIn's probably the best way. So just add me on LinkedIn. If you're watching this from there, that should be pretty easy. If not, it's just Tanner Lacey, and I'm at Sales Assembly. But looking forward to making some good connections here.
Amazing. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you did ask a question and we didn't get to it, I will answer them after the show in the comments section on LinkedIn. And really thanks for joining us again, Tanner. So if you wanted to get more juicy proposal stats, you can go to Proposify.com and download the latest data proposals. We analyzed 1 million proposals in our software, and we're able to kind of just get some juicy stats on which ones close the most. So go check that out. And join us next week. We're going to have one more proposal power up before we actually end the season of Closing Show Live. So we've done like 36 or something straight lives week to week. And then we come back with season 2 in September. So join us for the last episode for a while. It's not the year because we come back in September. So if you, and also if you have a good guest that you want to see in September or in October that we should talk to or speak to, and you think maybe you're that person, just DM me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great Tuesday, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.